Hello and welcome to Dad's DS Learning the Language of Autism. Belle Barraway here. This video is the final chapter of the food series, finally. And it's really a recap of everything that we've discussed over the last 4 or 5 weeks. I just wanted to kind of like put it into a nice sort of bullet point little package, just to sum up what we've spoken about. So it's just a little video really today. So if you haven't watched any of the videos previously, it might be a good idea to do that. Just to go over the chapters, or if you like what you hear on this recap, then you may feel inclined to subscribe, and then you can kind of like watch all the previous ones and catch up on the stuff that I've spoken about, which is breaking down all of the senses into very intricate pieces, which I hope you found useful. So the first thing I want to remind everybody, which I say all the time through all my videos, is it's a process. And if you feel that things aren't working or it's taking ages regards to food and getting your child to eat foods, certain foods, remember it is a process. And it did take 5 years of me as my son's mum to put a plate of food out every single night as if I was cooking his tea next to his iPad, which he just looked like he was ignoring completely. I realise now that he wasn't ignoring it. He was processing, he was getting used to the smells and the colours and the sounds and everything of the food. And I know that he appreciated me doing that and being patient. And now he eats a lovely large plate of raw organic vegetables and a little homemade beef burger, and he eats smoked salmon, things I never thought in a million years that he would eat. So please remember that it is a process and it may take a long time. It might not, I'm just giving you a kind of like, not the worst case scenario, because I don't believe in worst case scenarios, but just that it is a process and that it's worth taking your time, being patient, being positive, because obviously we want, your child to eat. That's the ultimate goal, is to get your child to eat. So please remember that. That's point number 1, and that's the really important one. Number 2, I would say, be brave. Be brave. You are supporting your child's needs by taking things very slowly and going at their level, at their pace, rather than getting overwhelmed and bogged down with what other people say should or should not be happening, or rules of food and eating may not work for your autistic child or young person, adult that you're caring for. And this does take a lot of courage and bravery and kind of almost not stubbornness, but kind of like, no, we're going to do it this way because this is the way it's working for us. That takes effort to do that. And I hope that I can empower you to stand in your truth, because you do know your child better than anybody else. Even if you don't understand their behaviours, like I've already said before in other videos, you may not understand all their behaviours, but you still know your child better than anybody else, and that is a fact. And you'll learn and get to know them even more, if you do take your time and you do go at your child's pace. It's like, sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere fast, but trust me, your child can hear everything, is processing everything, and is doing the best they can. They are doing the best they can. I've learned that in the 14 years that our son has been on this planet, is that he is always processing and listening and doing the best he can. Another way that can help you as a parent or carer not panic and freak out about your child's diet or limited diet, or that they eat and don't seem to know when to stop, or they're just not eating at all, or they're only eating certain places, or all those things, is to monitor their growth and their health, the health side of it. So it's like, get yourself a little book and just jot down on a regular basis, you know, keep a note of their weight, their height, and you know, things that I kept an eye on was like their energy levels, their sleep patterns, you know, are their nails growing, is their hair growing, what's their skin look like, you know, have they got good toileting routines. And if all those things are okay and they still are growing and they are thriving, and that it doesn't seem to be affecting their emotions or their moods or their general well-being, even if they're only eating a very limited diet, then use that to kind of like keep you calm and know that it's not, might not be ideal at the moment, but they are still growing. Sometimes I was amazed how our son was growing with such a small amount of food that he was eating, but he was and is. And if you're really concerned, then obviously always consult a doctor or a dietitian. You know, speak to a dietitian, and they could be really helpful and positive in helping you to figure out how much, whatever food they are eating, like what's nutrients are in that food and what they're getting. But if they are growing and they're thriving, then, you know, all children can thrive on very little food. It's incredible. I know I did as a child. I think I used to eat a bowl of cereal. Pretty much that was it. My mum was always taking me to the doctors, and the doctor was like, she's growing, she's thriving, don't worry about it. You know, the less you stress, she'll change, she'll eat different food at different times. So, but, you know, do monitor their well-being and their health, because obviously that's very important. And to check that they haven't got any kind of physical ailment. Because sometimes it's not just about the autism and the sensory stuff. Obviously, we've got to remember they're a whole person. And sometimes if they're not eating, it might be because of another issue, like they might have a sore throat, or they might just genuinely feel very well. They might, you know, have a stomach ache. There's lots of things to consider, as well as just the sensory processing stuff. So I just wanted to put that in as well. And if you can, you know, and as a parent, sometimes when they're not eating, you can get really scared and worried, and we start using threats and punishments, like, if you don't eat that, then you're not having that, and if you eat this, you can have that, and kind of like we try and bargain it. And although that's really understandable, what I have learned from my own son and from other autistic people that I speak to, that if it is a sensory processing challenge, to punish them for that it's just heartbreaking for them, because they're not doing it on purpose. So with all the other you know, information I've given over the other videos, hopefully that will help you avoid, you know, going into that space and kind of panicking and freaking out, which, you know, we all do it, we've all done it, all parents do it. Sometimes I think they're like, oh, just eat, but really try, if you can, not to do that. You know, another thing to remember is what you as a parent, neurotypical person, might regard as a pleasurable experience. You know, eating with friends, eating outside, eating in a restaurant, you know, eating with a family, or eating at all might be really pleasurable and a wonderful experience. It doesn't mean it's going to be a wonderful and pleasurable experience for your autistic person in your life, and to accept that, you know. Also, what I've learned is that a lot of people that are autistic, you know, they don't want a lot of fuss. So, you know, again, we tend to praise and like, oh, well done, yeah, you've eaten, and that can sometimes be really overwhelming. I mean, you'll know your child, and you'll know whether or not they respond to that. But if they find that too much pressure, then just keep it on the low key. Don't feel that you have to go there with them. Just kind of like acknowledge that they're eating and try and leave it there. It's a whole different way of parenting. It really, 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 really is. You know, celebrate it with your friends, celebrate it with your partner, but try not to overwhelm them with your praise, because sometimes what I've heard autistic people say is like the pressure, it's too much pressure. It's almost like the expectation is that they've got to do that all the time, and then it just becomes too much. Also, another point is to remember that things might change over time. They might revert back to not wanting to eat, or they might, you know, they might want to change. Things do change over time. So it's always worth trying something a little bit different, but not too different. And then if it doesn't work, then you just go back to what you were doing before. It's okay because of the process. And that if you, all this is done to kind of build up a trust. Trust is very important to all relationships, but especially with autistic people, young people, they really, you know, it's a very confusing, stressful, noisy world sometimes for people that are autistic. So they need to know that they can trust people that have got their back. And as parents, you really need to build that trust up. And that means being in, you know, stepping into their way of thinking as much as you possibly can, which isn't always easy as a neurotypical person because we are wired differently. But, you know, do the best that you can, build up that trust. I found that the more trust my son has with me, as he's grown, the more willing he is to try new things. Even if he ends up not liking it, he'll at least try. And I know that's because he trusts that he's got enough backlog of stuff now to know that most of the things that I introduce him to are for the good of him, and that meaning that he enjoys them, really enjoys them. And lastly, I just want to say that, you know what, it's okay to break social rules, especially around food. You know, food is a big thing. Everyone's got an opinion. They must use a knife and fork. They must sit at the table. They mustn't put their elbows on the table. They mustn't talk too loud. They mustn't laugh too much. You mustn't this, you mustn't that. You know, there's so many rules around food, social rules. And I would say that this gives neurotypical people a really good opportunity to kind of like break free of some of the, in my opinion, rules that are unnecessary. You know, food and eating is a social experience. All around the world we do it in different ways, using different implements or none. So I would say that, you know, let your autistic person in your life lead and take for some of the things, and the way that they are gives neurotypical people, it has me anyway, like freedom to just kind of like, do you know what, why do I have to use a spoon or fork when I eat that? Why can't I use my fingers? No, there's lots of cultures around the world that do not use cutlery, and it's quite okay. So it's like, remember that it's some rules are just not necessary, and that you are allowed to break them and make up your own. Enjoy your child, enjoy the person in your life who's autistic as much as you possibly can. You know, laughter, joy, sharing is the best way to build a really positive relationship. And another thing is, another reminder is to talk to as many autistic people as you can on Facebook groups. And I've written one down. There's a Facebook group that I find excellent that's run by autistic people and welcomes all, you know, neurotypical parents, autistic parents. It's the neurodiverse group. It's called Autism Inclusivity. Look them up on Facebook, and, you know, you can ask all sorts of questions, and they are very happy to offer you their experience and their perspective. And they are, you know, majoritively autistic people that are, you know, bless them out of the goodness of their hearts, because they feel passionately about helping autistic children particularly not have to go through the same possible struggles and misinterpretations of behaviour that they went through as children. So really, 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 you know, do seek advice from autistic groups and people out there. There's so many. Okay, so next week I'm going to be talking about as the weeks that are coming, I'm going to be talking about things like masking and making appointments with hospitals and clinics and whatnot, and tips and ideas on how best you can make that as comfortable for your child as possible. Things like toothbrushing, hair washing, bath times, and toys and activities. They're coming over the coming weeks. So if you want to subscribe by clicking on my little photograph, it's free. Just subscribe, and then you'll get alerts as to when my videos are coming out. They're going to come out, you know, roughly once a week. And I'd love your comments. I'd love your feedback. And thank you so much for watching. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you very much. Bye.